One of the first things that come to mind when talking about mainline SMT is the alignment system. Alongside it just being a cool game and story mechanic, it has given the series a relatively unique approach to storytelling, which has been true since the beginning of the franchise. That is, that the antagonistic forces aren't really villains in the conventional sense, or at least they aren't presented as such. This is true even for most non-mainline games. Using Persona as an example, Nyx and Maruki are set up incredibly differently as opposing forces to the main cast. However, the justification and means for their actions come from the desires from other humans. Same is true for the most powerful opponent in the franchise. He is only powerful due to humanity's need for stability in their lives. He, like all of the other entities in SMT, are subject to the great will of humanity. They may seem like villains due to their patronizing view of humans, but when examining their motives, you could hardly call them that. Even though SMT as a whole does not do a good job of making law endings compelling to the player, the choice of law versus chaos is hardly presented in a fashion that tells you what is right and what is wrong. However, there is a notable exception to this. In SMT4 Apocalypse, is the overarching force that you defeat in the final battle of the game. However, he is not present in the events of the story in any way, shape, or form, only revealing himself until Nanashi infiltrates his universe. To push the plot forward, Team Maniacs did something that they don't often do, which is have an incredibly powerful deity intentionally written as the villain of the story, one that you cannot side with even if you agree with him and his plan. Taking one of the most revered entities in the world and twisting him evil under his rule, Krishna's role in SMT4 Apocalypse, in my opinion, is the best part of the entire game. Before we get into the SMT side of things, a very brief overview of Krishna lore is required. As a very important character in Hindu texts, he is the god of love, compassion, and protection. In Hinduism, there are three major gods: Brahma the creator, Vishnu the preserver, and Shiva the destroyer. Vishnu, who according to Hinduism is our current god overseeing and preserving the universe as we are experiencing it now, has incarnated on this earth 9 times before, with a 10th time being prophesized in the future. In each incarnation throughout history, he has become more advanced. Some incarnations include a fish, a boar, a half-human, a dwarf, then a human. You get the idea. The most recent incarnations were Krishna and Buddha, who presented themselves as mentally advanced humans that we see in modern times. To put into context Krishna's importance to my largely Western audience, he has many similarities to Jesus Christ. Both are fully human, but simultaneously fully divine, and seen as saviors in their respective religions. Depending on how you interpret the Son of God, Jesus was God made manifest in human form, which has sparked many comparisons to Krishna in his story. Many stories about Krishna's life will be referenced later on while talking about Megami Tensei, but for the sake of time, I will leave links to those stories in the description as they aren't wholly relevant to this video. So all of that is to say, Krishna is a big deal. He is amongst one of the most worshipped and beloved figures in any religion around the world. So Atlas making him one of the few true villains of mainline SMT in 4 Apocalypse was certainly a decision. In my opinion, this is as close as you could get to putting JC himself in the games as a law rep when talking about possible religious backlash. SMT weirdly has been able to skip around and avoid any type of criticism from religious groups, despite having the Abrahamic creator god consistently being portrayed as a complete tyrant. My theory on this is because they have no idea what a Megami Tensei is, as these games did not gain any notable traction in the West until the mid-2010s and are still relatively niche. However, SMT4 Apocalypse was not niche enough for one Rajad Zed. a somewhat notable man who is known for delivering Hindu prayers in state assemblies and city councils across North America. Now, before I go over this story, I want to get the incredibly obvious out of the way, which is that Zed does not speak for the entire Hindu faith like he claims to do. If you go on his website, you'll see a lot of Hindus are upset at blank, or Hindus are in support of blank on various topics. Somehow, back in 2016, before Persona 5 was even localized, he caught wind of Krishna's appearance in Apocalypse a few weeks before the game's release, and proceeded to make an article where he urged Sega to remove him from the game as a whole. The reason for this was, and I quote, the fact that it trivialized a highly revered Hindu deity. Not only does he voice displeasure of Krishna being depicted as evil, but specifically mentions how his fedora is offensive because it's a design choice commonly associated with gangsters. Now, like I said, because Zed is offended by this does not mean that Hindus as a whole are offended. I've seen just as many Hindus ask that he not speak for them as a whole as it pertains to other topics even outside of Megami Tensei. And just to briefly bring my opinion into this, I think it's stupid to get offended by pretty much any type of fiction so long as it doesn't incite hatred and/or violence. Krishna's appearance is in no way supposed to be a commentary on Hindu beliefs, just a fictional scenario as to what the entity would be like under the circumstances of being reduced to a demon by the creator god in the SMT universe. Either way, it's about as close to a religious controversy as SMT has ever gotten in its 30 years of existence, which is honestly pretty impressive. A lot of criticism from religious people regarding the series does similarly come from the fact that the entities in the game are often not always accurate to the source material. The thing is, they aren't really supposed to be. As religious ideology and history clash and contradict in real life, it would be hard to write a story or narrative like SMT does around multiple ideologies in a theologically consistent way. Controversy aside, let's talk about Krishna in SMT4 Apocalypse. Early on in the game, our protagonist Nanashi and his friend Asahi are approached by the pagan god Odin, who seemingly observed Nanashi and Asahi trying to gain the respect of the Hunters Association, and in turn gave them a request to unseal a demon who could help mankind in the coming war against Merkaba and Lucifer. After accepting the quest, they travel to Kanda no Yashiro and defeat the seal guardian Sukuna Hikona. After defeating him, you break the seal holding Krishna. This is the point where Apocalypse's story truly diverges from vanilla SMT4, as the war between Chaos and Law will soon be brutally interrupted by the forces of the Divine Powers. Once the cast arrives in Ginza, the motives and power of Krishna and the Divine Powers are established. After capturing and threatening to kill Asahi, Flynn submits to the Divine Powers as Odin pelts him with lightning. The goal is for Flynn to join with Krishna in order to become his Kalki and destroy the Creator God, freeing humanity from their lives as slaves to the Creator. This part is especially relevant to real-life lore, as Kalki is the name meant to be given to the next and final incarnation of Vishnu. In essence, Krishna wants to use Flynn as a means to become powerful enough to kill. After capturing Flynn, Krishna summons the most notable opponent the cast needs to take on until the mid-game, Shesha. Shesha being under Krishna's control is also accurate to his theologic roots, as he is a serpent created by Vishnu. Now free from his seal, Shesha is Krishna's main force when it comes to neutralizing the citizens of Tokyo. Breaking into the firmament, he also causes Tokyo to see sunlight for the first time since the Great Cataclysm. Afterwards, the Divine Powers with Flynn enter the mouth of Shesha and are transported to Tsukiji Konganji, which is now their base of operations. Hours of gameplay passes and you defeat Shesha, for now. After doing so, you infiltrate the basement of Tsukiji Konganji in an attempt to rescue Flynn. You find Flynn crucified with a strange dark aura around him, and intercept one of your party members, Toki, from killing him. You fight Toki, pretty easily dispatch of her, and then the real antagonists show up. After not seeing him for quite some time, Krishna explains his plan to the cast. He pities humans, calling their lives short yet brutish, and vows once again that he will deliver salvation to not only the inhabitants of Tokyo, but to everyone in the universe. To him, salvation is freeing humans from the constraints of God by killing them via Shesha and transporting their souls to a new universe. Alongside vowing that this new universe will be created through something called a cosmic egg by the next full moon, he also tells the cast that they did not kill Shesha, and he will soon return as nothing will stop him from his obligation to free humanity. Odin then proceeds to canonically kick the shit out of your party, and then presses Dagda as to why he isn't stopping this infiltration. This is where a distinction is made that many people do not seem to understand, which is how Krishna's new universe will be different from Dagda's in the eventual anarchy route of the endgame. Odin explains that all souls will be divided equally amongst gods, effectively bringing the state of humanity to the whims of polytheism rather than the creator god. Dagda, on the other hand, wants to elevate human individualism to its extreme, where they will function absent from the influence of gods and even other humans. It isn't clear if Dagda is doing this out of a love for humanity, as it seems that he just wants to return to his true, intangible form as nature itself. After fleeing from Tsukichi Konganji, a bunch of shit happens, and the next plot beat as far as this video is concerned is us seeing Sheisha's second form in Ikebukuro. It's revealed that Krishna was telling Gaston the truth when he insisted that he cannot be killed, as he is back bigger and stronger than last time, and also with the ability to speak. After being defeated twice, he vows to kill Nanashi the next time he sees him. Now the crew properly invade Tsukichi Konganji, as the forces of both law and chaos, alongside the hunters, are trying to reclaim Flynn, who is held hostage there. After completing the dungeon, we find Flynn battling and killing Odin once the party arrives onto the scene. With Flynn in no condition to fight, Nanashi's team takes on the responsibility of fighting Krishna. After beating him, he states that the tragic comedy between the angels and demons are set, and that he will be watching from the gallery. Pretty anticlimactic exit for the main antagonist up until this point, but hey man, at least he's gone. The next arc of the game is exactly that. The crew travels to Mikado, and then a three-way war is fought between the humans of Tokyo, Lucifer's Chaos Legion, and Merkaba's Samurai. Here you could pick the intentionally bad Chaos and Law endings of the game, but we decide to fight both to pursue the neutral path. At the end of the day, neutrality prevails, and the Hunters Association throws a big celebration in HQ at Kusumigaseki. But shockingly, everyone in the area besides the main cast collapses during Flynn's speech. Up until this point, we are under the presumption that the divine powers are cooked and no longer involved in the story. That is until we get a SpongeBob-esque gross-up of Sheisha impersonating Flynn.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, in what my opinion was by far the best scene in the entire game, Sheisha, now fully sentient, reveals to us that the divine powers' defeat at Tsukichi Konganji was completely staged. Odin and Krishna are both completely fine, and Sheisha being revived a third time has become even stronger than he was before. Sheisha tries to realize his vow and kill Nanashi, but Asahi steps in and just gets absolutely mucked. Before the team can even try to respond, Sheisha vanishes outside and becomes the previously mentioned cosmic egg. This is where Krishna reveals himself again, as we are now in the final arc of the game. After defeating the entirety of the divine powers on our way to the heart of the egg, we have our final standoff with Krishna. Here is where Krishna gives his justification in detail. In this universe, the law of the axiom states that humans will die and reincarnate over and over again. And within those rules, has created a universe where humans are bound to suffer. The reason for this is because without the suffering of humans, they would not seek the salvation supposedly offered by Yahweh. The proof of this is in Lucifer, who is a creation of Yahweh himself, who is meant to deceive humans and prolong their suffering. This system is best described by Krishna himself.
Only with the order of angels and the chaos of demons do humans lose their way. Humans are bound to their covenant with him. They depend on him, submit to him, and suffer humiliation. But this covenant is not the only way. You have been tricked into suffering without love.
After his monologue, Krishna forces Flynn to submit to him and become his Kalki, creating Krishna's form of a god slayer, Vishnu Flynn. Aside from the final boss, this is in my opinion the hardest fight in the entire game. In my experience, the only way to beat this guy on war difficulty is buffing and debuffing the shit out of him, and because he will dekaja and dekunda you after doing so, you will need the move imposing stance to take a press turn away from him. If you don't have that skill, you will have to leave and get it, because if not, you are completely screwed, especially if you are underleveled like I was. Alongside this, the battle music for this fight is absolutely nuts. Debatably the best track in the entire game. After defeating him, either you or Flynn will slice him in half using Masakado's katana, depending on what route you choose. Either way, Krishna is not actually dead, you just resealed him into the Ark and is recruitable for the final dungeon of the game if you so choose. So yeah, that's Krishna in SMT4 Apocalypse. What I find most interesting is that even though the process for creating his new universe is the same as Dagda's, the outcome would have been incredibly different. I've seen people say that Krishna should have been an option to side with instead of Dagda, but I think this comes from a misunderstanding of what Krishna truly wanted. I will definitely hear out the argument that Dagda's world for the individuals is probably gonna suck, because I would agree. But at the same time, I do think it is a better outcome than what Krishna was proposing. Krishna wanted humanity to be divided equally among gods, which sounds cool from a god's perspective, but thinking about how this would turn out realistically for 2 seconds, it's pretty obvious that this would be terrible for humans. The stark contrast between the citizens of Tokyo and that of Mikado is very noticeable throughout SMT4's duology. Now, imagine division like that between hundreds if not thousands of gods. Humans would adopt the ideals of their protector gods even more than before, and would become even more divided than we already are. This could have been articulated in the games a bit better to make the absence of the divine powers route less odd. But at the same time, I don't think that is a resolution that makes sense at all. Even if you don't like Dagda's idea, you have to admit that it's definitely a lot more understandable as a solution for humans than whatever Krishna was planning. Regardless of motives, Krishna was definitely very entertaining. He and Shesha were responsible for, in my opinion, the most exciting parts of the entire game. I hope that in the future, if Atlas does incorporate villains that are not alignment focused, that it is of the same quality of Krishna as an opposing force. Who knows, maybe that'll be the Kadistu in SMT5 Vengeance. Speaking of, I will be covering that game on this channel shortly, so for those interested, please hit subscribe. Until next time.